Well, after 8 years, it's about time to upgrade the dust collection system in here. I've been using the same thing for 8 years now, and it's one of the kind of cheaper ones, and it's about time to get a full cyclone unit and run metal ductwork hung from the ceiling. So let's get started. Alright, so there's a few reasons why I've wanted to upgrade my dust collection. The first thing that's happening right now with my old system is the dust collector doesn't seem to want to turn on very well, so I'm actually a little worried the motor's going out. So that's one reason, but there have been a lot of other reasons. Mainly, I wanted to hang ductwork, and I've wanted to do this ever since I moved in here, but it's kind of daunting in a shop that has, I think we have like 16 to 18 foot ceilings. I wasn't really looking forward to hanging that stuff and having to connect it all together at the time. Plus, it would have been more expensive. You need a little bit longer runs and everything. So I opted for a cheap, dust collector that was a little underpowered probably for what I needed. But I ran pretty short runs. And so everything worked great, but I was stepping over pipes and it wasn't amazing. It worked and it had some limitations. So I wanted to upgrade, get a full-on duct system. I want to go with a cyclone. That the dust collector itself is a cyclone. I have kind of a separator system set up so that I can vacuum the floor and not worry about big chunks of debris running into the impeller. But even on the table saw, sometimes the little chunks kind of fall in, the little cutoffs from the pen blanks, and it goes straight into the impeller. So I wanted to have separator on the system itself. That's number two. I wanted easier bag changes. Not to say that the old one was terrible. There are some really bad ones, but you kind of just had to hang the plastic bag on these metal hooks, and it just kind of wrecked it, it destroyed it, and it just wasn't amazing. I didn't like emptying very much. So the new system, it's going to be a 50-gallon drum where you just pop out the bag, throw it away, put in a new one, and move on with your life. Hopefully it's going to be a little bit faster and easier. Plus it's also got a little light that tells you when it's full, which is something that I always would do is forget to look and it would kind of fill up. And once you get to a certain point, it actually makes emptying even more difficult. So that's another problem with it. One thing also that I had is actually two dust collectors. I had one over at the lathe that was like a 1 horsepower, kind of really low powered, but that's all it was doing was just sucking dust, trying to get as much off the lathe. Well, with the new system, I'm going to actually replace 2 dust collectors that I was using because I didn't want to run duct and hook it into the main system all the way over to the lathe. It would have just, doubled the amount of duct work and length on the pipe, and it probably wouldn't have worked with the old dust collector. So I just had a separate one. Well, the nice thing is I'm going to get rid of 2 dust collectors with this system. The other issue is the dust collectors that I have had the like lowest quality filter bags on the top. It's like the old school, white filter bag things. Those are horrible. They do not, they basically, you're sucking dust in and then they throw out of the filter fine particles right back into the air. And that was a pretty big problem if I wasn't wearing a mask at the lathe. It was literally right next to the lathe. So I'm sucking in dust and it's basically just blowing it right back in my face. So the nice thing is I'm going to have a cyclone unit that's actually kind of outside of my shop, but it is going to have excellent filtration. So I'm not going to have to worry about whatever goes into the dust collection system coming right back out into my shop. So that's kind of a nice little handy upgrade. So I think those are the majority of the reasons that I'm upgrading. I don't necessarily expect to have excellent, like a huge improvement of dust collection at each tool. The lathe is almost impossible to have good dust collection on. It's not a tool that lends itself to dust collection. My bandsaw doesn't have very good dust collection. It's really hard to collect on the top of the table. I'm thinking about adding another arm on there to try and improve it, but I don't think that this dust collector that I'm buying in the system is going to change really anything with my collection at that tool. The last one is the table saw, which can have decent dust collection on it, but you really need to have an overhead guard. And I've kind of tried to do that with a few things, and it just, the way that I use it, the way that I want to use it, basically, I can't get a dust hood right over the blade, which is where you need it to collect dust right there. So I don't think that it's going to make a huge difference in that area, but it probably will be a little bit better because it's going to be a lot higher volume. It's going to be sucking a lot more air. So anyway, those are the reasons that I'm doing it, and I wanted to kind of mention that limitation. I don't really expect it to be a significant change. on the tool necessarily, but I have all these other reasons for upgrading basically that I think is going to make life a lot better. So in this video, I'm not going to show you how to install everything and do all this. It's going to be kind of time-lapse video. Let me stop and say that the duct work that I'm getting and the dust collector is the 5 horsepower Dust Gorilla from Oneida. That's what I went with for the Cyclone. It is overpowered for my shop. I'm going to say right now, I really only have about it's actually probably less than a 2-car garage area where all the tools are that need dust collection. So it's not very big necessarily, but I wanted to go with pretty much kind of the flagship, just in case I expand or change what I'm doing, you know, something, if I'm doing like river tables and creating a lot more chips, if I get a huge CNC machine. I don't plan to do any of these things, but I'd rather spend the money on something that's that I don't need to upgrade, basically, that's going to handle whatever I throw at it on this round, basically. Now, for the ductwork, I'm going with Nordfab's quick clamp system, the metal. And that stuff, the reason I'm going with that, it is ridiculously expensive. I mean, gut punch expensive. But I have pretty high ceilings, and I don't really, the reason I never hung ductwork in my shop was it just was not appealing, hanging on a ladder and drilling and doing all this kind of stuff with PVC, you know, gluing or drilling. It didn't sound like I was going to enjoy it, so I just opted to run it on the ground. Well, I had pipes and ductwork all over the place that I had to step over, and so that's one of the reasons why I want a new duct system that's, you know, metal and all that stuff. But I went with the Nordfab quick clamp system just because it should be, according to marketing, it should be a lot easier to put together when I'm hanging on a ladder and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not going to have any help. So I opted to pay the exorbitant prices on that. But anyway, so that's what you can expect with this video. At the end, what I'm going to do is come back, give you my first impressions, you know, how does it work, and then kind of cover, you know, like I said, I went through all of my expectations, why I'm upgrading. So is this thing meeting that? Is it going to work? And then I'm going to share any tips or things that I learned, I guess, putting in this system. Realistically, I don't know that this type of a system is going to be for most people. This is a pretty professional setup, I would say, and the price tag is equally professional. So I don't know about that, but I think that I can probably share some tips or some thoughts, at least, going through this that might be interesting to people that are thinking about putting in a central dust collection system. Now, the other thing is I may learn some little tricks and things about how these specific things work that I will definitely share. And then at the end, I'm going to give you kind of my final thoughts and wrap it up and just kind of say, you know, how was it? Because I will say that this investment was the biggest amount of money I've spent on my business. And for just a dust collection system, I'll be honest, I've kind of been like, oh, should I be doing this right now? And I still don't know, you know? And so at the end, after everything's installed and, you know, I've used it for a little bit, I'll come back and kind of give you my honest opinion. Now, I want to also mention that, you know, there's no sponsorship, no affiliation at all. I paid full price for all this stuff. And so just want to make sure that, you know, nobody says, oh, well, you got it all for free anyway. No, I paid full price, and I just want to let you guys know that this is going to be how I feel about it in the end. So anyway, let's get to some time-lapse footage and start putting this thing together. All right, so at this point, the ductwork is installed and the dust collector is all put together and plugged in. So there's only one thing to do at this point, and that's to test it out. So let's cross our fingers and hope this thing turns on, first of all, and just see how it goes. So, fire in the hole. Nice. There it goes. Whoa. Sounds like a jet's taking off. It's working. All right. Oh, it actually shuts off pretty quick. So it's working. I'm excited. We got everything put together. So at this point, I need to kind of play with it a little bit. I have some pen blanks to cut up tonight, so I'm going to do that. I'll probably get over on the lathe and turn, open the vent over at the lathe and just kind of see how it's working. Make sure everything's kind of working right. Check all the vents and ports. Kind of inspect it all, I guess. But we'll come back. I'm not going to go through all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to come back and we'll do a little bit of a wrap up. I'm going to give it a little bit of time to kind of play with it, and then I'll give you kind of my final thoughts, or my initial final thoughts, because, I can't really give you how does it all work without me having about 6 months or so, actually using it. So it's going to take a little while, but I'll give you my initial impressions. And then the other thing that I wanted to do with this video is just kind of share any, things that I learned, any thoughts during the process. If you're thinking about, getting one of these systems, setting something like this up, and just kind of share my experience. Like I said, it wasn't meant to be how to install all this stuff. Just, here's my experience and here's some thoughts I had about it. So we'll come back and do a little bit of a wrap up. So I've had the system installed and I've been using it for a couple weeks now, and man, I am super impressed. This is a much better system than the one I have, which is just a huge upgrade, basically. Now, it did cost a lot more than the system I had before, but it's working very well. So again, I started off, wanting to upgrade this system for better filtration. Definitely that one filter. I got rid of the lathe dust collector, basically, that was just kind of blowing air, blowing dust back in my face when I was using it. So all the dust collectors, I got rid of 2 of them, and there's only one left with a really high quality filter. Great filtration on this system. Emptying the dust bin is going to be much faster and easier, and I haven't done it yet, but I put the system together. I know how it works. You just unclamp it, pull out the little plastic thing that holds the bag down, take your bag out, toss it, put a new one in, reclamp it. So it's going to be much faster. Plus, now I have a little light that tells me when I need to empty it. So that's going to be nice, and it's in the shop. Now, I was also looking to get something that was pretty much overpowered for my shop and flexible, and it would be expandable in the future. So this thing definitely is going to be able to handle anything I throw at it if I decide to change directions or, get different tools, more tools that are making more chips. So definitely knock that one out. And the ductwork system, it's a very flexible system. And we'll kind of talk about that. That was the other thing that I wanted to do, was hang ductwork, metal ductwork specifically. And so I went with the Nordfab quick clamp system. And the big drawback is it's extremely expensive. However, I will say, I haven't put together one of the standard metal duct systems, ever, but I know how it goes together, and this stuff was super simple to put together. I mean, it's just, once you kind of figure the clamps out, they just kind of pop on once you've gotten the pipes together, lined up right. And it went together great. You can take it apart, put it back together. There's no screwing and untaping and taping and doing any of that kind of stuff. So very, very easy to put together. It went quick, and it was totally doable for one person. It made the process pretty simple. Now, I also want to mention that there was a few air leaks that I noticed after I got everything put together. And with the quick clamp system, that's kind of a problem because you can't tape it. It's not there's a clamp in the way. And so I didn't know what to do at first, and I ended up contacting Oneida. They tried helping out, and they're like, well, this doesn't really happen that often. And what it ended up being, I actually figured out what was going on my own. I thought that I had everything hung level, and I didn't. So if you have leaks with this system, what's happening is your pipes are not, butted up against each other. They're kind of offset. So all I had to do was just kind of, lift up one run or something, or the next clamp, and just did that in a couple spaces or places on the duct runs, and everything fixed itself. So there's one more that it's going to be a real pain for me to climb up on top of my wood rack to get to it. So I'm just leaving it. It's a tiny little whistle. So I'm just going to leave that one. I don't think it's having any massive effect on it. The thing is super powerful. So just wanted to kind of mention that, though. If you do get leaks with this system, I think that probably what's happening is you've got something kind of messed up with the way that you hung it or mounted it. Now, one thing I do want to touch on with the putting together the cyclone unit itself, that motor housing and fan shroud is extremely heavy and very tough to get in place. I have the 55-gallon drum system, which ends up putting it where you have to get it 9 feet in the air. You got to lift it somehow and put it on the top of that whole thing. It's extremely difficult, and I would really not recommend anybody try to do it themselves. It's going to be extremely tough. I was originally going to try to do that, and I'm on a 9-foot ladder with my arms like fully extended, and I could get the motor up to the right level. We have a kind of a hydraulic lift thing. And I was just like, I'm going to fall off this thing or break it. The impeller is like a carbon fiber plastic, which I'm sure it's very strong, but if you dropped it, it'd be pretty easy to break the impeller, and at that point you're hosed. So, that's a difficult thing. I ended up buying a Harbor Freight electric chain hoist, mounting it to the ceiling, and then using that to get it on. And that worked really well. But I just want to warn you, if you're going to go with something like this, that motor housing needs to go on the top, and you're either going to need to call a bunch of buddies over or get a forklift, or you're going to have to get one of those electric chain hoist type things. And at that point, it should be fairly easy. Now, the last little thing that I want to mention is I wasn't as precise as I probably could have been when I was designing the layout of the ductwork. I think that I relied on Oneida doing some of the more work than I thought that they would do, I guess. And it wasn't that I relied on them. It just, if you don't give them the right specs, basically, if you don't give them highly accurate, tool locations where the drops need to be, I kind of thumbed it a little bit, thinking, which you're going to have to kind of adjust things on the fly a little bit here and there, but I think that I gave them a very rudimentary and not a very good detailed plan when we were planning it. And I would recommend that you be as detailed and accurate as possible with your layouts. Possibly if you're familiar with SketchUp, the program, 3D model everything and get all your tools and everything, where the ducts are going to run. That will be helpful, and it'll make things a little bit easier, because I had to actually kind of change some stuff on the fly because I didn't really put things, as accurately as I thought they were. So I just wanted to kind of share that little tidbit. The more accurate your plan is, the easier things are going to go in the end. So what are my overall thoughts at this point? I am extremely happy with this system. We'll have to see over the next 6 months to a year, does anything change? Is there any, issues that pop up? Or, is it just exactly how it is right now? We'll have to see, and I might do another video down the road to kind of, share that. I will say that the one thing that was difficult with this one, there's maybe a little bit of regret, I'm not sure that it was the best decision, it was spending the amount of money I did on the Nordfab quick clamp system. I could have gone with just kind of a standard metal duct system for half that price. And it's tough because it's just a question of, I could have bought another tool with how much I spent extra compared to, the next level metal ductwork. And the question is the ease of use, is that simplicity of how easy it was to put together and the flexibility if I want to change things, was that worth that much money? That's the biggest question I have. I'm very happy and would definitely rebuy, the Dust Gorilla itself. But that ductwork was, man, it's a very hefty price. But I don't know. I think it was worth it, and I think that if I move my shop, that's going to be easy to re-put together and all that stuff, or reconfigure. So it's very flexible, and I like that, but price tag. So that's the only, I guess, regret or thing that I'm having a little trouble with at this point. Other than that, the system is fabulous. And again, I want to mention that I wasn't sponsored or affiliated in any way with Oneida, but I do want to thank them because the process was very smooth with them. I dealt with Lisa. She was the sales rep for me, and she was extremely knowledgeable. She helped me with a lot of decisions on, what to go with and how to do it. And even when I had some issues, she was right there, fixed some problems. I actually had an issue with the shipping. They sent it through FedEx, and FedEx didn't even contact me to set up, when they're going to drop it off. So they just came and gave everything 2 times. This is 2 different shipments. Gave everything to our neighbor. And I'm like, wow, it's a good thing that we know him and he didn't just take it, because So, and it wasn't Oneida's fault, but they ended up refunding my shipping anyway. So it was excellent working with them. The product is awesome. So if you're looking for a Cyclone unit, Oneida is a very good company, and I had a great experience. And this is in the middle of, she was telling me that they're moving 4 times as much product as they normally do. So there was potential for things to kind of go, a lot of things to go wrong, basically, when you're, you know, kind of, I don't know, behind the 8 ball a little bit with how much stuff you're doing. If you've increased the amount of sales that you're doing 4-fold, mistakes can happen, and everything went really well with them. So I just want to kind of mention that at the end. So overall, I hope you guys enjoyed watching this all come together, and hopefully, you know, it kind of helped out with maybe a question or two, or if you're thinking about getting, you know, these systems, hopefully it kind of helped you, you know, with that decision or something like that. You know, who knows? Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video overall. So if you have any comments or questions, leave those down below, and I'll try to get to them as soon as possible. But I guess until next time, guys, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.